Welcome, Nerdboxers, to the Horror Remake Show, the show where we will look at decisions that have been made by writers and directors that seemed sensible at the time, but at the end of the day, it left us asking, what the hell just happened? Now, occasionally there are sometimes suits that like to get involved whose only artistic ability was coloring outside the lines as a kid, but they have an epiphany and suddenly think that they're Picasso and a master of painting. And maybe the only thing that pisses fans off more than studio interference is remakes, but I'm here to tell you that not all remakes are bad. Without remakes, we would have been robbed of films like John Carpenter's The Thing, David Cronenberg's The Fly, and Zack Snyder's Dawn of the Dead. Sometimes remakes benefit from advancements in technology in film and special effects. Except that piece of shit, and that one. Anyway, Nerdboxers, I am not here to sway your opinions on remakes. That's what the comments are for, or these two videos that we did in the past. But we are here to talk about a screaming injustice that was done in the Scream universe, and that is the death of Randy Meeks. And I asked the question, what if Randy survived? And what ripple effects would it have had on the entire franchise moving forward if I had a crack at that story? Before we begin, we need to explore why Randy, the self-proclaimed love slave of Sidney Prescott, would have lived. This dude just wasn't a fan, he was a walking shrine to horror movies, spewing quotes like confetti, dissecting tropes faster than you can say final jump scare, and even laying down the law on how to survive a good old-fashioned slasher flick.
Jesus Christ, you don't know the rules?
Have an aneurysm, why don't you?
There are certain rules that one must abide by in order to successfully survive a horror movie. For instance, number 1, you can never have sex. No. Big no-no! Big no!
I'm a dead man.
Sex equals death, okay? Number 2, you can never drink or do drugs. No, the sin factor. It's a sin, it's an extension of number 1. And number 3, never, ever, ever, under any circumstances say, I'll be right back. Because you won't be back.
I'm getting another beer. You want one?
Yeah, sure.
I'll be right back.
Think of him as the ultimate hype man. His knowledge kept everyone entertained and maybe a little bit spooked, but also proved crucial in a fight against Ghostface. He was a loyal wingman using his horror movie IQ to help the crew navigate the nightmare. But here's the kicker, Randy was basically the audience's spirit animal. He reacted to the whole ordeal with the same wide-eyed terror and popcorn-clutching anticipation we all felt. He pointed out the classic horror tropes unfolding in real life, reminding everyone, hey, this is just like that movie where
his body will come popping up in the last reel somewhere. Eyes gouged out, fingers cut off, teeth knocked out. See, the police are always off track with this shit. If they watch Prom Night, they'd save time. There's a formula to it. A very simple formula. Everybody's a suspect.
While losing Randy was a major blow because he was a part of the original Core 4, it reminded us in Scream that no one is truly safe, including the horror expert. Now, they tried to copy him after he, kicked the bucket, but those attempts were about as scary as a sock puppet on Prozac. So while Randy's death is truly shocking, we have to ask that question, what if he survived? Someone else would have to take that dirt nap instead of him to keep those stakes so high that were set in Scream 2. Let's dissect the remaining characters and see how Randy's survival could have rewritten the entire Scream universe. First things first, Sydney's the main course in this bloody buffet, so she's off the chopping block. Having just met Cotton, there wouldn't be much of an impact with his death, especially since he's more of a red herring in the film. Gail, well, let's just say her questionable morals and ties to the Prescotts might keep her dancing with danger a little longer. So that leaves us with Dewey, the ever-charming deputy whose romantic tryst with Gail had been short-lived and not so sweet. This is getting juicy. There was no reason to reignite this flame between the two of them. Gail was a career-driven woman, and Dewey seems more likely to shoot himself when placing his gun into his holster on any given day. And as we learned in Part 6, Gail is a survivor.
Don't you know the legacy characters are disposable now? Nobody cares about last century's heroes.
And why bother with me at all?
Call it nostalgia. Or maybe you deserve to be punished for all that money you made off the misery of others. Maybe it's time someone made a buck reporting your death.
You know you're like the 10th guy to try this, right? And spoiler alert, it never works out for the dipshit in the mask.
It's safe to say that Dewey's death would have been another gut punch just as effective as Randy's. In our remake of Scream 2, we still open with the bloodbath at the movie theater, with Phil and Maureen screaming their last hurrahs, and the news vultures descending upon Windsor College the next day for a press conference faster than you can say sequel. Gail, ever the career shark, shoves her way to the front so that she can steal the spotlight while our new core friend group watches from a distance. Randy, ever the horror sleuth, leaves the group to get a closer look at the media frenzy, and maybe snag a glimpse at Gail in action. Meanwhile, Dewey wanders the campus like a lost puppy, pining for Sydney until they finally reunite. Have you ever wondered if Dewey was a little smitten with Sydney? I know I have. Let me know what your thoughts are by leaving it in the comments. Now I'm going to leave a few scenes the same. Dewey's run-in with Gail, the frat party massacre, rest in peace Cece. But here's our twist. The next day we see Dewey, Gail, and Randy huddled together on campus, piecing together the killer's twisted puzzle.
The killer's trying to finish what was started.
Well, Sid's under protection, right?
Yeah.
Here's where our timeline is about to shift. Having some old feelings begin to stir for Gail, and then being shown up in front of local police earlier, Dewey is dealing with an emotional roller coaster as Gail rattles off a list of victims from the Woodsboro massacre, including his sister.
In Woodsboro, there were more victims before the home stretch. Tatum, my cameraman, him.
Time out.
The phone rings, Gail reaches for it, but Dewey, in a surprising display of either bravado or sheer frustration, pulls it from her hand. Maybe it's the residual cop instinct kicking in from his past, who knows. Dewey fumbles for words, clearly not prepared for a debate with the murderous trivia host. He whispers the news to a wide-eyed Gail and Randy who look on. It's time for him to ditch that Barney Fife moniker and catch a killer so that he can show off for Gail. But he realizes that not only does he have a limp, he doesn't know his way around campus. Dewey directs Gail and Randy to scour the campus to look for who he's talking with. Not knowing what to say, then stammers out.
What's your favorite scary movie, huh, wise guy?
Stab. Do you want to know what my favorite scene is?
Dewey, still sputtering, still trying to collect all of his thoughts, isn't able to reply as Ghostface continues to talk, his voice dripping with mock sincerity.
My favorite scene is definitely the part where that bitch gets killed in the garage.
Dewey snaps and begins to yell at Ghostface, but this only inspires the killer to twist that knife a little bit further now that he's thrown Dewey out of his senses.
How clueless was she, huh? Didn't even cease to coming from a mile away. Maybe she was in on it, and Billy had to clean up his mess.
Dewey, channeling his inner Randy, growls.
Fuck you!
Ghostface, sensing that he has his worm on the hook, shifts gears.
Speaking of clueless, why are you really on campus, Dewey? Playing hero for Sydney, or maybe trying to win back Gail?
A primal fear flickered in Dewey's eyes.
Don't you dare touch her!
As Dewey's eyes darted towards Gail's news van.
Were you not paying attention to the pattern conversation, Dewey?
Dewey's mind raced. Pattern? What pattern? Then it hit him. Gail mentioning that Tatum was next. Before he could stammer out a reply, Ghostface lunges out from behind him, dragging Dewey into the darkness of the news van and slamming the door shut on his future, carving him up like a ham for Christmas dinner. So it makes a lot of sense here where Randy would be substitute with Dewey on a few different levels here. One, the impact on the fans that are watching the movie. 2, keeping the stakes really high because we don't know who is going to die next and any high stake character could be at play. But then there's that pattern where a Riley is next on the chopping block. Now let's fast forward ahead to the confrontation between Sydney and Cotton at the library. Cotton is brought into the police station for questioning. Inside, Sydney is a wreck.
It shouldn't have been Dewey. It should have been me. I should call his mother.
Derek lowers her hand and asks Randy if he can make the call instead, so that he and Hallie can take her back to the dorm. Randy rolls his eyes before reluctantly agreeing, feeling that he should be the one at Sydney's side instead of being Derek's errand boy. And this continues the story arc of Randy being in love with Sydney that never got to play out, and it makes more sense if Randy would survive over Dewey. Randy makes the call outside where he sees Gail stepping out of the police station.
You! This is all your fault. You wrote the book inspiring this psycho.
Oh, please. Newsflash, Randy. This is not my fault, and I have nothing to do with it.
And just like we saw in Scream 2 between Gail and Dewey, it dawns on her that she may have.
Hey, wait a minute. If the killer really is watching and relishing every minute, then he'd be here on these tapes, right? At each crime scene.
Randy comes to his senses with a mischievous grin and reveals that he has the keys to the film studio while raising them into the air, dangling from his finger. And this would make more sense than Dewey having access to the college. You would imagine with deaths occurring on campus and around campus, a lot of things would be on lockdown. But Randy would have the keys because he's a film student and probably a part of some programs. Now, for the rest of this remake, we're going to minus the brief makeout session that happens as Randy fulfills Dewey's role in the remainder of the film, even being used as a pincushion by Ghostface against the soundproof glass. Scream 2 would play out the same after that. But hold on to your popcorn, nerdboxers, because the real twist in Randy surviving won't happen until the next part in this series, Scream 3, which we will dive into in Chapter 2 of this story, of what would happen if Randy survived in Scream 2. The Randy Meeks remake timeline will span over 3 more films, and a new episode will drop each month. Please let me know what you thought about this episode by dropping a comment below. Share your theories on what you think would happen with Randy surviving in the universe, or if you would have killed somebody else in his place. Also, don't forget, drop a like. If you're into Scream stuff, we have Scream merchandise inspired by your comments, so check out the link in that description. And once again, help us get to 5,000 subscribers. Subscribe. Don't worry about the notification bell because we'll always be there in your subscription list and you can watch us at any point. And until the next Last Horror Remake show, see you.